yeah, I thought I'd talk through how did I end up working at the Met Office. So I've been working here for the last 3.5 years. Next slide, please. So yeah, a quick overview, I guess, of my career so far. So like the others, for AS and A level, I chose the subjects that I was good at, but also I really enjoyed. So for A level, I took biology, chemistry, and geography. And I actually decided to drop maths because although I was better off at it, I really did not enjoy it as a subject. And I also decided to do an extended project qualification because I really wanted to know and learn more about the atmosphere and ocean, because it was something I was really interested in, but unfortunately the A levels didn't really go into. I then started looking at university degrees, and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I was really interested in the ocean, but I started looking at like geography degrees, natural science, maybe like marine biology, but nothing really seemed to like tick the box until I went to Southampton on a visit day and sort of accidentally discovered there's a subject called oceanography where you can learn all about the ocean, the physics, the chemistry, the biology. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. So decided to sign up for a 4-year course there and then, partly because it meant that you got a master's at the end of it, and I didn't have to go through the faff of like reapplying for another degree after my 3rd year. And then after uni, I took some time out for a bit, but I did get onto a graduate scheme at the Met Office, which was 2 years long. And then I have since got a permanent job as an applied climate scientist. So next slide, please. So a bit about uni. So the thing which attracted me to Southampton is that it's an accredited degree and it has lots of unique modules, which means it's super employable. So we had a whole semester learning on how to survey the seafloor, which is really employable if you want to go into things like working offshore, a lot of stuff to do like installing wind turbines or like cables to connect them back to the shoreline, and also just sort of mapping the ocean because there's a lot of things which still aren't really understood. The other great thing was that it was based at the National Oceanography Centre, which means you're surrounded by researchers and not just university staff, and you are like right on the waterfront. So on the top right there, you can see a picture of the building and then RV Callista's out the front. And the other great thing is that research ship was accessible to all the students and lecturers. So basically every sort of semester we were out on the water in Southampton, like looking at the science in practice. So you'd learn about like, oh, this is what the temperature structure looks like if you're going down through the water from the surface to the seafloor. And then you could literally go out, send what on the top left, that's called a CTD. And then you could see what like the trace which was coming back, you know, how it was measuring temperature. And I just really love that. Like, I think that's the thing I have liked most about everything I've done so far is seeing how it's been applied. And then the other sort of 2 great things about my university experience was it was a small intake. So it meant you got like lots of classroom and contact time, which I knew I preferred to rather than like sat in a big lecture theatre, for example. And if you want to find out more about oceanography, I've just put a link there on the bottom left, which takes you through to some like free visit days you can do at Southampton as well as other universities. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as part of my degree, I did a semester abroad in Norway in my 2nd year. And this came about through the Erasmus program, which I know doesn't really run anymore, but it's still possible to do things like this with universities because a lot of them still have existing exchange agreements between the UK university and wherever it is abroad. And I was able to do this partly through an Erasmus grant and also because I had a higher student loan to fund it. And it was a really great experience. It was 6 months in Norway, and there was so many topics which weren't covered by my degree in Southampton. So things like learning about the weather much more, and also like having a much more like sort of focus on climate change, as well as like paleoclimatology. So what's happened to our climate in the past like thousands to millions of years. And a big part of the Norwegian culture is also volunteering. So the sort of top right picture with all the tents is where I helped set those up for a beer festival. And they also had the World Cycling Championships going on at the time. So I also volunteered as a course marshal there. And it was a really great experience, sort of getting out and getting to know your city much better and connecting with the locals. And the other thing I would recommend, if it's something you think you're interested in, is it also meant that I have loads of international friends now and have got a much better network to sort of understanding what's going on sort of in the weather and climate community. Next slide, please. So then I started to think about, what do I want to do after uni? So the first thing I sort of realized is actually really, really hard to apply for jobs and PhDs whilst you're studying. So I actually applied for the Met Office to do a summer placement during my first year at university, as well as during my third year at university, and both times I was not successful. So the first time I was like a blank, like didn't get anywhere. The second time I got through to an interview, but that wasn't successful. So I started to think about like other careers instead of going and working maybe directly in like weather and climate change. So one thing I thought about was joining the Navy as a hydrographic officer. So what I thought would be useful is if I applied to the University Royal Naval Unit. And after having some like failures at other applications, I had huge imposter syndrome and didn't think I was going to be successful. But if we go on to the next slide, please. It turns out it was. So this is it's sort of like a society you can do alongside your degree at university. So the minimum commitment is like 1 hour a week to go to a training night, and then everything else happens like during the weekends or during the holidays. And you're an honorary reservist, so there's no obligation to join the military at the end. It's not like you can be joined up or like pulled up for service or anything like that. And I found that a really fantastic experience to go out at sea more, practice how to navigate, how to like steer a ship on the helm. And also there was loads of leadership tasks and team building exercises, as well as lots of opportunities for like adventure training and doing lots of sport. And I also made like loads of friends out of it. So all these pictures here are like me doing adventure training or like out at sea. And I think the best part of that experience was it's a huge confidence builder for me. And you also got paid. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So what I did find though was, whilst it was a great experience, learning more about what it'd be like to live in the Navy and being a hydrographic officer, I realized it probably wasn't for me, because you'd end up more directing people what to do rather than doing the work yourself. So I ended up again not knowing what I wanted to do. So I thought, because I really like ocean and climate change, I should apply for some PhDs. But unfortunately, although I was offered a PhD, it didn't have any funding to go with it. So I ended up graduating after 4 years with no plan. And similar to Hannah, I then worked in a supermarket for a bit, and I was actually really, really content with it. And it was only due to like family peer pressure, and because all my friends had graduated with jobs, I decided that I should keep looking and applied for lots via LinkedIn, which is where I found out about the Met Office grad scheme. And this time I was successful. I did the interview and I got the job. So next slide, please. So very quickly, I'll just skim through what the grad scheme's like. So it was a 2-year fixed term contract based in the science teams and the consultancy teams in the Met Office. And this means you spend like 3 to 6 months rotating through the different teams, working on different things. So one of the things I looked at was how we could improve the accuracy of wave height forecasts we have around the coastline in the UK. Primarily that's for shipping, but it's also used to inform like installing wind turbines and things like that. I also did some work for gritting companies, so very strongly linked to what Hannah mentioned. Part of the service we provide is explaining materials, so the gritting company can explain to, say, like the site they're going to go out and grit, like a supermarket car park, like what are the complexities of forecasting snow, or why is the surface temperature of a road different to the air temperature, for example. So I found that really interesting and also really niche. And then I also did some work with an energy company, helping to inform them how much more power you can send down the power lines, because it turns out that's really dependent on the weather, because they overheat essentially, and that limits how much power you can send down them. So if it's windy, you can send more power down them. And I thought that was really cool. It's a really cool application of weather and climate I just wouldn't have thought of. And then finally, linked to what Hannah Bloomfield said, I also did some work scoping out how the Met Office could better use their climate projections they have for the UK for different customer applications. And a big part of that was trying to engage with like financial and insurance organisations and helping them understand how they could embed climate projections and understand the risk from extreme weather now and how that might change in the future as part of their environmental, sustainable governance sort of strategy and scores they have to look into. And then the final slide, please. And then, yeah, about a year and a half ago, I finished a grad scheme and applied for basically the same job, but as an applied scientist. So after about 6 months, I also then was promoted to scientist level, which is sort of like the second level up. And it's sort of the same sort of thing. It's really varied, really niche work. It's all looking at how you can apply weather and climate change, understanding what it is a specific company or government department wants to know about weather and climate. And often it's because they've been impacted by some sort of extreme weather. And the great thing about the Met Office is there's loads of seminars and talks and things you can go to alongside your job. There's loads and loads of training opportunities and opportunities to travel and present. And also it's just a really friendly atmosphere with lots of helpful colleagues. And on the bottom right there, there's a picture of myself and Alice and Melissa, where we won an award recently for setting up a seminar series like gauged at early career scientists and learning about things like assuming like no prior science knowledge. And yeah, it's just it is really nice place to work. And then final slide, please. Sorry, I've got one. So I thought I'd just mention now that if working at the Met Office is something you'd be interested in, as well as the summer placements which happen every year, we also have a virtual work experience coming up in the next month or so. There's still an opportunity to apply, and I just put some quick details on the slide there.